Hearing that Funimation was interested in looking at the Dragon Age property for an animated feature was one of the best days of my time with Dragon Age.
When we heard about that, basically my jaw hit the floor.
Being in the industry as long as I have, it's something that you always dream about doing. You hear stories, but lots of things start to happen and never really do. And to know that this is actually coming out and this is actually a real product is just really exciting.
Some people have asked why we would make an anime of Dragon Age. It's certainly a very Western property, but at the same time, it's one where we see notable strengths in the approach that anime uses to storytelling.
A lot of our primary reference were the games. We looked at Japanese prints, a lot of the films made by Kurosawa, and when someone came to us and said, would you like an anime made of Dragon Age, we were so excited. We jumped on the chance.
They also brought the name Oxybot. And that was very intriguing, as I just finished, no more than a month earlier, watching Vexil.
You watch Vexil and just the way the shots are composed, and there's a lot of negative space, a lot of breathing room. A focal point is created in that kind of a Japanese sensibility to have people who are masters of that subject matter teach us something and bring back to the franchise something that we couldn't really just instinctively bring.
The great thing about anime is that it's well respected within the North American community, especially as a more adult form of animation.
It appeals to an audience that is willing to tackle more meaty subjects and understand that there's a philosophy, not just, kind of, hey, it's a bad guy, let's get him, kind of mindlessness.
So really what anime gives us is the ability to tell a more adult story, a story with more complex themes than maybe a traditional animation would let us do.
Dawn of the Seeker had several specific guidelines it had to follow in order to make sure that it stayed part of the Dragon Age canon. It had to understand the organizations, and that Dragon Age, deep down inside, is largely a political story, wrapped with magic and filled with dragons, but at the same time about a struggle for dominance among humans who, in a lot of ways, are frightened by the world that surrounds them. It also needed to, above anything else, understand the complexities and the interrelations between mages and Templars and Seekers, and understanding that it's never so simple as to paint any one of those groups as the bad guy or any one of those groups as the good guys. And I think that is where Dawn of the Seeker really succeeds. Mages came about of a simple, singular question. Would mages be beloved? Would they be powerful? Would they be, the crotchety old man who lives up in the tower who occasionally rips open the fabric of the universe? That's not the kind of thing that goes unpoliced.
Magic is extremely powerful, but it's actually very heavily reviled by the people, because what the Chantry says is that mages actually climbed up to heaven and tried to enter heaven, and as a result, they actually were cast out, corrupted, they became the Darkspawn, and also that God essentially left the world as a result of this essentially infringement upon his territory. So as a result, people aren't so happy about mages, but they're recognized as being a powerful tool.
Circle mages have pledged their allegiance to the Chantry. It's blood mages who are the opposition.
Mages come into flavors, essentially. You have the loyalists, the ones who belong to the Circle. Their lives are very strictly controlled. They have an armored organization that's resistant to magic who controls them.
The Circle. This is a Chantry authorized organization where mages go to essentially be monitored.
So they don't learn the forbidden magics. They don't leave the towers and terrorize the populace. And many mages are very comfortable with that. But there are some who rebel. There's always some who rebel. They don't want to be controlled. They don't see themselves as bad people. Or maybe they've been pushed too far and they want to get revenge on the people that kept them captive. Now those are called apostates.
They're essentially outlaws. They're not properly authorized, and they're hunted.
And many of those mages turn to what we call blood magic. It's exceedingly powerful, it's exceedingly dangerous, and it was taught to man by demons. So it's inherently something that will corrupt you and twist you over time.
So the Templars are the magical enforcement arm of the Chantry. Basically, they're a knight order designed and founded to hunt and control mages.
They come directly from the church's main teaching, which is to say, magic should never rule over man. The Templars are the ones who ensure that happens.
Templars serve as essentially the police force there. So they ensure that mages are rounded up and brought into the circle.
They're both prison guards, they're escorts if mages are ever allowed outside of the circle, and they're also the organization that hunts them down when they escape.
Now, they have certain abilities that are granted to them through lyrium, which is essentially a crystallized form of magic, which allows them to be somewhat magic resistant.
It's highly addictive, that leaves them kind of a wreck if they ever stop taking it, but they know the sacrifice they're making because it allows them to be one of the very few organizations that can stop mages. They work in coordinated groups, they're heavily armed, they're incredibly well trained, and they fight using, standard tactics, swords, shields, they form battle lines, but it's that magic resistance that gives them the edge when they're fighting the supernatural.
For the Chantry! For the Chantry!
The Seeker Order is very elite. They are the best of the best, taken from the Templar Order or potentially from outside in extremely rare circumstances. The Seekers have one job. They watch the Watchmen. They are even more powerful, even better trained. They are elite warrior monks in a lot of ways who have access to really some of the most powerful magics and some of the most unique training that Chantry has to provide. And in that, they're empowered to go outside of Chantry law, to investigate the clergy, to investigate the Templars, and to make sure that they're kept under control so that their power isn't abused. They don't need to wait for approval. They don't need to submit paperwork. If they discover something that they believe is proof of demonic incursion, proof of blood magic being used or practiced on any level, then they're empowered to eliminate what they see as the threat.
So Dawn of the Seeker is really the backstory of Cassandra, a character that we just touch on in Dragon Age 2. But with our fans, they're really interested in Dragon Age as the world. That's really what Dragon Age is about. It's really the story of the world.
In the Dragon Age universe, we have been pursuing a storyline. So when the question came up, who should this movie be about? And the answer became Cassandra. It's because it ties in with the themes that we've been building to.
Every time we tell a story, it's about broadening that appeal, giving more depth to the world, and giving our fans the ability to dig a little bit deeper.
So for us, finding out her backstory, seeing how she rose to the prominence that she has, gives us this completely new take on what's happening both with her order and with the Templars, and with that ongoing conflict that ties the whole Dragon Age universe together. Some people have asked, why would we use a female as a lead character? And it's funny because to me, that almost isn't an issue. Dragon Age has been universally gender blind in a lot of ways. Cassandra being a woman was almost secondary to the fact that Cassandra was a seeker and kind of a badass.
So Cassandra is designed to be strong, militant, with a very hard line when it comes to the way the Chantry should be.
She's tough as nails. She won't take no for an answer, and she's going to get the answers no matter what.
We wanted a strong character, someone who could carry the storyline of Dragon Age 2 to be, in a lot of ways, the interrogator. So she had to be powerful, she had to be forceful, she had to be a little bit angry.
Don't lie to me. You knew him even before he became the champion.
As one of the strong arms of the Chantry, she became this character who is conflicted and torn by the events that she's seen occur in the world around her. She's watched something she believed in come tumbling down.
And later on in the anime, what I think is going to be add another dimension to her character is we definitely explore her childhood, her origins, and why she is the way she is.
We end up with a Cassandra who's got longer hair, who hasn't, cropped it quite as short. She's a little younger. She's a little more, I guess, emotionally tempestuous. She's thrown into a situation where she isn't given time to prepare. She has to think on her feet. And so I think what we see, outside of what we saw in Dragon Age 2, is a character who's a little bit more vulnerable, both emotionally and physically.
So when approaching the visual design for Cassandra, we definitely want to take what her internal state is and try and externalize some of that.
This Cassandra, as she was here, the idea was essentially to make her look kind of like queen of the vampires in a way, a bit severe and dramatic.
Cassandra's look was in a lot of ways influenced by where she's from. She is specifically tied to a family that was notorious for being the best dragon hunters in the entire world of Ferelden, the Pentaghasts. And so coming from this lineage meant that she came from a specific place, Navarra. And Navarra, of course, is situated a little further towards the equator. Everybody's a bit darker tone in skin. They tend to have black hair. So we understand where people from different countries have different looks. And then, obviously, we wanted to make sure that she was hot. To dial her to 11, to make her absolutely gorgeous, really enticing, and yet at the same time, she's powerful, she's strong, she's wearing plate mail.
She's intelligent and she's devoted to the good, so she's very beautiful in an austere kind of way.
You'll pay for your betrayal of the Chantry!
Every head in the game is based from a single mesh, and we just apply what's called a morph to it, where we will take that same mesh and stretch it and pull it in different ways in order to make them look unique. So for Cassandra, she's got the narrow eyebrows. She's got much more of like a heart-shaped face with a strong jaw. She's also got the darker lips and the kind of walnut hazel eyes that appear a bit warm and not so cold as bright blue eyes would appear, so that she appeared a bit more authoritative, had a bit more of a harder edge to her.
Filthy murdering mage!
I'm not the one you want!
Because of just the technical requirements for how the armor works, and then also the hair. Longer hair is a bit of a tricky thing to pull off. And considering that Cassandra too was going to be in this very particular lighting arrangement in that dark room with Varric, it just wasn't quite working. So her short hairstyle was sort of a compromise. It was still something that looked severe, but wasn't going to start doing strange things with the armor.
Then we also look at historical reference, looking at costuming, often the Tudor period, but sometimes the Saracens. She's very tough, so her armored appearance we thought would be appropriate.
This will be the armor for Cassandra. So it's a massive armor, which is the biggest armor that we have, the classification that we have in the game. It contains all of the full detail, as high and as detailed as they can get it. So this is down to the nicks and dings in the metal. There's the material patterning on the leather, the embroidery, the stitching. Every kind of detail that the artist can imagine will be on this model. And this is where we do all of the colors and everything else like that to make the materials look like they actually do in real life, or whatever the artistic vision is.
The coloration for the Seeker uniform, because essentially that's what she's wearing, we wanted it to be something that was instantly recognizable. The word iconic gets thrown around a lot and is sometimes overused, but really that's what we wanted. Something that if you saw her coming at you from the shadows or even in the middle of a crowd in broad daylight, you would just know, oh no, this, she means business. The Seeker symbol, the emblem that is emblazoned on her and all of her pennants and banners everywhere, it's a modification of the Chantry symbol. She comes from the Chantry, but we put the eye symbol in the middle. It's a fairly literal emblem, but it's the Chantry seeking the truth.
I think the fans are going to respond well to Galleon because he's a handsome devil.
I am Regalian de Marsal. My friends call me Galleon.
What we've seen in our Dragon Age fans, the really hardcore ones, is that they love nothing more than a good leading man. And Galleon, in Dawn of the Seeker, brings that in spades. And really representing a side of mages that people have started to wonder, well, are there any good mages left?
Previously, we've showed mages as either terrified, apostates, or menacing characters. And Galleon is more comfortable with his abilities.
He's a nice mix of being funny and droll, but at the same time intensely serious about the work he's doing. He is a loyal circle mage.
He's got his power, he knows how to use it, and he matures into a very interesting character later in his life.
He's not necessarily the best boy ever. Sometimes he misbehaves, but he always does it with a twinkle in his eye.
Prefer the top, do you?
I think one of the things that we almost won't have a chance to dig into as much with the Dragon Age games, but that the movie does, is a character I'm very excited to get a little more, I guess, texture on. The Divine. She's incredibly powerful, but she's still a person. And certainly one of our core principles has always been that people should never just be tableaus. They should never be two-dimensional cardboard cutouts. I am in charge of things. Instead, we want her to be, you know, a lady who's dealing with incredibly tense situations that in a lot of ways are being exacerbated by the events of Dragon Age 2 and made even worse in Dawn of the Seeker. So seeing her as a character, as someone who's real and nuanced, will add, I think, an immense amount to one of the central organizations of the DA world.